Hi, Sam.
Hey, Claire.
And we're live. How have you been?
I've been good. I've been inspired. I've been feeling optimistic because the word has gotten out to so many people regarding all of the information that was kept sort of fringe or, in the realm of conspiracy theory, where now it's no longer in that realm. It's more mainstream.
Hmm.
And I wanted to talk to you about a certain personality now in the alternative media. Uh, uh, she goes by the name of Mel K or Melanie. She
Yes.
lives in New York City.
Hmm.
She's a lot like myself.
Hmm.
When I
She
listen to her,
Jewish?
she's Jewish, yeah. And when I look at her and listen to her, and I really identify with her. I see her as like a female counterpart or a female component to myself, actually, because we have very
Hmm.
similar backgrounds. She's a graduate of New York University,
Hmm.
and in she with honors. It's written in her bio. She studied film and video and movie making, and she's an investigative journalist. There's a lot I have in common with her as far as ways of thinking, uh, perspectives, and she has a heavy, not a heavy, she has a nice New York accent. So I really relate to her on a personal level. We're very
Hmm.
similar. She grew up in New York. I grew up in New York, and the fact that she grew up in a liberal city and she's still like a conservative. Right wing Jewish a woman. Not that there's a lack of them in New York, but that they're very silent or they're not very vocal because they're fighting the stream of the left in New York, especially of activist, liberal, leftist, atheistic Jews that seem to think that they are superior to everyone morally and intellectually, like people like Noam Chomsky and that Democracy Now woman, or a lot of these people that are self-righteous, self-important. They drown out the voices of the conservative right-wing Jews that live in New York or in the Northeast. They seem to take the stage, the limelight. And a lot of the gays amongst them as well. They're very loud, very vocal, very full of themselves, and it's about time we have people like Melanie K. That she's courageous, she's a brave person for speaking out, and she has experience in Hollywood. She was working in Hollywood for many years, and she exposes the full truth, about what's really going on. But to have a person like her, a Jewish woman, young, good looking, and on the right side of this war, and it is a war. She's
Hmm.
repeating a lot of the things you're hearing coming out of people like Alex Jones or like Jay Dyer or Infowars, or she has her sources, and she did her, or Joe Rogan even now. She did her own research. She did do it on an independent individual level, where she wasn't just relying on a word of mouth or reports from the alternative media. So she is very well informed, and she's very thorough. She's very aware. She's very, sort of like fully conscious of it. She's, it's ingrained in her now. She's sort of like internalized it. It's a part of her now. It's not just a parrot repeating things she's heard on Infowars or alternative media from BitChute or from Zero Hedge. She sees where to look, and she goes and does her own investigative journalism. And when it comes out of her mouth, instead of coming out of the mouth of, let's say, somebody like Alex Jones, which Alex Jones rubs a lot of people the wrong way, all right, just because of his persona, because he's a big Texan, he's burly, he's got that hoarse voice, he's very aggressive sounding, and it can be intimidating, and it could sound like he's a lunatic, and maybe it turns people off. But when it comes from a well-informed Jewish woman in New York that's very intelligent, intellectual, soft-spoken, and charismatic, she smiles. She's attractive. She's
She
laughing.
is attractive.
She has that New York vibe about her, And
Hmm.
so women, especially it appeals to women. Women will always see her as being more sincere, or more trustworthy, or more worth listening to, or more, they'll lend an ear to her. And to others in America that just, are not, in a 100%, ready to believe Alex Jones. But
Hmm.
Alex Jones did his job. I mean, he reached a huge, wide audience of Americans and people worldwide that don't care about his, rough persona, or his aggressive, behavior, or the tone of his voice and his anger and all that. That people can tolerate that. People can put up with that. But and that's why he brought some. Years ago, he had a female anchor, big boobed, really pretty, really sexy, Leanne McAdoo, and they made sure to show off her boobs in order to get the men's attention, and it got my attention. I used to always tune in to Leanne McAdoo, and she was also nice, soft spoken, attractive, and she says she was reporting on the same things. It just had a different effect when you hear, even in the military, they always make sure that there are female voices in the communications between combat troops or units, whatever. Men will always pay more attention to a female voice. So they did psychological research on this, and behavioral psychology research, and that's why they use a lot of women in military communications, especially in the heat of battle, or in combat, or like in dogfights, or what have you. They make sure to have a coordinator, a female voice, coordinating a lot of things between the forces.
Is it what effect does it have on men as opposed to a
It's
male
just that
voice being
men
born?
pay more attention to a female voice.
Oh.
Yes, they did behavioral psychological research on it, and men pay more attention. They are more focused, or they are more sort of like a sharp when in listening to a female voice. It's like it registers better. It registers faster to hear a
Mm-hmm.
female voice. They did this research in the military. That's why and I know this to be true. I know this to be a fact as far as the studies that were done. Israel makes sure to have women in the comms division, or the comms branch of the military, because they know that it's more effective in relaying information amongst male units or male forces. It just it's a it people men comprehend it, and men receive it, and it registers faster. Let's just say
Mm-hmm.
that's why. Obviously Alex Jones knows this, and he has female anchors to just be a counter to his style and his tone and his delivery. He knows he has to have that balance, so he always makes sure he has to have like female anchors as well, co-hosting, or sometimes on other segments in his platform, to not only appeal to the women, it also appeals to the men to have female anchors or female voices speaking. So I'm saying Mel K, Melanie here, she fulfills that role in a very effective way, as far as repeating a lot of the messages that came out of Alex Jones over the decades, and over from many other sources in alternative media. She puts it together. She sort of like it's more concise. It's more. She compresses it, and she's very focused on giving you the details, the specifics, and not sounding like she's Looney Tunes. I mean, she has that professionalism about her, and but she's also personable. She's like I said, she's a. That's why I see a lot of myself in her, as far as the style and her approach, and it clicks with me.
Mm-hmm.
Also because she's a New Yorker, it's like I always have a special place in my heart for New Yorkers that are like myself.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I relate better to them. But just kudos to her. And I imagine that even I don't know how, but I'm just assuming. I have the suspicion that sometimes It gets to these people. Some of the things we put out, that we post to Facebook, they hear this. I just have a sneaking suspicion that some of them are listening, and even her. And the last show she had, I just felt like they listened to a previous recording that we made, and they were somehow repeating similar things we said, or just the vibe just made me feel like something was being. Something was being sort of like copied or repeated, or it registered in their minds, and it's just like they repeated it because they mentioned Saul Alinsky and Rules for Radicals. Rules for Radicals. Remember when we talked about it with Vincent Bruno? And so in her last show, they made sure that people that she was talking to made sure to remember to mention that again, Rules for Radicals, Saul Alinsky, Luciferianism, all this, and some other things that were happening there in that back and forth that made me feel maybe they were listening. And it could be because Jones listens sometimes, and she's on his show with Flyover Country, that program of the Midwestern couple. They're very nice people also, and it's like I'm glad that there's a cooperation between her and them, and everybody in America of different religious backgrounds and different locations around the country are connecting and clicking, and it's they can't stop this. What Trump did and the Trump movement, MAGA, and all that. It's not going away. The Americans that are awake will not surrender to these people, even if it means going through we have to go through this unstoppable momentum that has developed. And they also said it. And a lot of people are like, I'm listening to Jim Ray. I'm listening to Nino Rodriguez on BitChute, David Nino Rodriguez, also a part of this. They also interview him on Flyover Country, and even Cliff High, and all of them are there's a consensus agreement that what has been put into motion cannot be reversed. The old system that we are living in now of the monetary system that we are in now is on death's door. It is going to receive the death sentence. It's on a death row, and the date for its electrocution or suffocation, whatever, is there in the horizon, and it's within sight. And there will have to be a transition. So everybody's speculating what will happen. Who'll take over? Will the populist movements around the world and nationalistic movements around the world manage to wrestle power away from these all the nefarious groups that we know to be the villains that we are all against, that we are all fighting, that we are all exposing, that we all do not trust. We know what they are about. They can no longer fool the masses. And what she mentioned in that video I sent you of hers, that interview, that special long exclusive interview, is that people can now decipher the language. They know that they are being bullshitted. They know they are being like in poker, they are being bluffed by these globalist organizations, telling them that they are doing these things for their own benefit or for the benefit of the world's environment, or all sorts of bullshit front groups and front sort of agendas that they like, like that you'll own nothing and you'll be happy video from the World Economic Forum. The stupid guy with the shit eating grin on his face, like when it says underneath his stupid smile, you'll own nothing, you'll whatever.
You'll be a happy slave.
You'll be a happy slave. You remember what I'm talking about? Maybe we could put it on screen. I can find it for you. I'm sure they have it available far and wide on all the platforms, because we know what this agenda is about. But to have it be exposed is a really huge win, and a huge advantage for all people that have been confused over the years and didn't make sense of who's really pulling the strings, and who's really driving them and their families over a cliff deliberately.
Mhm.
And now we know, we can identify them. We know who the real puppet masters are behind them. She's a Jewish woman, Mel K, and she has no qualms about talking about the Rothschilds. And we know that because they intermarried with the aristocrats and the royals of Europe. Doesn't
Mhm.
matter that they started off as Jews, and and that they have a hand in screwing around with Israel's politics and societal norms and our culture and our beliefs here. They mess around, they fool around with all the money they have. They fool around in our politics and in our justice system. They own the Supreme Court of Israel, the judges of Israel. They have a lot of influence here. All the non-governmental organizations of George Soros are very involved in meddling in our business in Israel. And now Israelis have also woken up to this as well, because it's hard for them. Israelis are stubborn and full of themselves, and they're egotistical, and they think they know everything. And so it's harder to wake them up to these a difficult truths. But when you have a New York Jewish woman, good looking, she looks Jewish, and she has that vibe, she has that delivery, she has that style. It registers even with Israelis. So she can be more convincing than Alex Jones when it comes to convincing half asleep or zombie like Israelis that don't want to give lend an ear to any of this information. Okay, so a lot of Israeli women will prefer to listen to her than to listen to somebody like me or Alex Jones, because we're men, and we come off sounding like we're alarmists, or we're paranoid, or we're conspiracy theorists, or we live in a world of imagination, because these women, they have all these expectations from men, especially if they're of our age, like my age and Alex's age. We're the same age. They expect, in order for us to be more credible to them, we have to be affluent, we have to be well adjusted. I mean, they could listen to Alex Jones because he's divorced and married, twice, and has many children, and he's well off, and he earns a good income. So a
Mhm.
woman, just on the basis of that, will see him as being more credible. She'll still prefer to listen to a woman over him. But
Mhm.
if it's a successful man, then they'll lend him an ear more than a person that, like a guy that's not successful or still struggling.
Mhm.
But so I could give two shits, because it's about to end and everything will flip on its head. It's just I'm thinking ahead of what can convince women, Israeli women or Israeli men, more than, let's say, alternative media that they don't really want to listen to, they don't have the patience for. So I see somebody like Mel K, because of who she is, her identity, her religion, her delivery, her mentality, all of that, the whole package. I see her as being more effective in convincing other Jews. All right.
Mhm.
And so that's why I'm happy that somebody like her is actually doing this kind of work.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
it's a calibration of the message to make it maximally, res what's the word? Capable of being absorbed and received, I
yeah,
guess. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I mean, just to have a variety of
Mhm.
different people, different personalities, different sort of like different identities of people, that because it just becomes more effective.
Mm.
Uh,
Because
yeah,
it's confirmation of a particular position. It's not just, a certain type of person or whatever.
right, right. That's a good way of putting it. I found it here. I want you here. I found it here. Let's just
Okay.
remind people of what we're talking about. I'll add the link here in the private chat, and just to have it be more visceral and visual, so that it'll remind people. I know most of the people listening know exactly what we're talking about. Just to, just as a visual and audio aid, just to see what these people are really trying to implement on all of us, and we should all be resisting this.
Mhm.
Mhm. You could shut off the audio if you want.
Yeah, I'm just about to do the share screen thing, and
Uh,
it's yes, I've got it. The Great Reset. You owe nothing and be
you'll
happy.
be, yeah. But this, with that stupid shit eating grin. How much did that guy get paid to be such a bastard? To be in there a little, you know.
Yeah. I'm just trying to see if I've
You
got
can
it.
make it
Yes.
full screen there somewhere.
Um, hold on. It seems to be running, but without the sound. So I need to um, find the sound.
It's just music in the background. It's not really that critical.
Okay.
You just show that shit eating grin guy, and people will know exactly what we're talking about. It
Okay.
comes at the end of it.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Shit eater. They try to make it attractive and seem like it's a good thing. That's the facade. That's the sort of marketing they want to use to get people to think that it's okay to submit to this. But Mel K did a good job at speaking and describing exactly how these people operate, and what the true agenda is behind it. It is very sinister. All right, that's enough there,
Okay.
Claire. Shit eater again. They make sure to use that a lot on Infowars because they know what registers in people's minds the memory of certain images, and also now with Gage and the orchestra, the San Francisco Orchestra with the pedos. Let's sing it again.
Coming for your children or something.
Yeah, we're coming for your children. We will take your children. We will, whatever. I don't really remember the words. I just remember their stupid, pedo-looking faces. The scrawny idiots that should have their heads blown off. We're coming for your children. Na, 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 na. All right, so they know that. So they know that registers with people. So they'll make good use of that illustration and that audio with the story time, drag queen story time visuals as well. It needs to be driven home. I mean, this is what will really get people to unite and be on the same page and not submit to any of this anymore. All right. So she mentions all of the organizations. She mentions events in history. She mentions meetings that they've had. Dr. Zev Zelenko, may his memory be blessed, was another very courageous religious Jew, an Orthodox Jew that spoke out very clearly, very sharply, and he did name names, and he did go into details. It wasn't just about making outlandish conspiratorial claims. The thing is that with the information age and the ability to cross-reference things, and she's an investigative journalist, and she interviewed Dr. Zelenko of blessed memory. He passed away just this past week. They coordinated with amongst themselves, and so people are asking, like religious Christians, evangelical Christians that have it in for left-wing atheist Jews, progressive Jews that are in league with the rest of the Satanists. They are asking, where are the religious Jews? Where are the right-wing conservative Jews? Where are the God-fearing Jews? Why aren't they speaking out? Why aren't they helping us? And so here you have examples of Jews that are speaking out, that are on the right side of history, that are vocal, that are resisting, that are joining the resistance against this, group of so-called elites, so-called globalists. That's what they call themselves. And we know their Nazi roots, and we know their Nazi influences. We know that it's a great, a component of of this movement that aligned itself together with a lot of different other components that are all part of this cabal. It's not necessarily exclusively just Nazis that were smuggled out of Nazi Germany into South America and North America, the Operation Paperclip. They are a big component of it, and they helped to build this structure that is working against the average normal person, everyday person around the world, not just Americans. But I think Americans are unique in the fact that they know that they've been duped the most. They've been brainwashed the most. They've been conditioned the most. They've been poisoned the most over time. And the things that this cabal is capable of doing to third world countries and third world leaders is far more heinous than what they did to the American people. They outright execute. They outright assassinate third world leaders, and they outright destroy the economies of third world countries, or countries that that are weaker and don't want to fall in line with their plans, agendas, or demands. So I don't want to get you into trouble, but she talked about Lukashenko from Belarus, and she talked about the president of Chad and the president of Tanzania having been offered close to $1 billion, bribe money in order to implement, lockdowns and whatever. We won't go into the details. And the two African leaders were assassinated, and that's on record. That's not make-believe. That's not imagination. Those two leaders, after they went to the press and they they chirped, or what do you call that when they
sing like a canary.
They sang like canaries. They spilled the beans. They exposed what had been proposed to them in secret, and they said which organization approached them to have them do this to their own countries in exchange for bribe money. And Lukashenko also talked about this, and Russian intelligence was observing all of this, that they were attempting also a color revolution in Belarus to overthrow Lukashenko because he refused to accept the bribe money and he refused to implement lockdowns. And so Melanie is very brave, very righteous. I think even she's not religious. I mean, she's a right-wing conservative. She's like myself. She's a believer. You can call her a religious person. She's not probably very observant or practicing Jew to a great degree, but her heart is in the right place, and her beliefs are in line with religious, God-fearing, God believers of every different religion. And so the fact that she's an activist and she's very vocal and she does her best because of who she is and her ability to influence and persuade, it makes her, in my eyes, a righteous woman, a righteous Jew. And I relate to her and I identify with her a lot. So I'm glad she's around. I'm glad she's doing what she's doing. And she'll at least rattle the brains of the Jews in New York that are sitting on the fence. She'll rattle their cage because she's one of them. And, she's not an Israeli. She's like a native-born New Yorker. I'm a native Israeli born in Israel. And even a person like myself is a slightly less trustworthy and less believable to New York Jews that have more cohesion with other New York Jews born in New York or born in the United States with the same lifestyle, the same sort of life experience. Like you said, it's more give me the right word, confirmation for them. They receive more confirmation from people that are identical to them or similar to them or one of them. I'm one of them, but still, because I'm sort of like half. I'm a in between worlds. I can persuade them. I can influence them, but yeah, Ma.
Stop that.
Yeah. All right. So, point being, look, she's a human. She's a relatable, and Alex
Mhm.
Jones is the same, and the people at Infowars are the same, and a lot of the alternative media personalities are very also personable and human, and their heart is in the right place, and they want to oppose these groups and their agendas and their relentless drive to want to screw everybody, make everybody poor, and they already implemented a lot of their policies. They already had a great effect in damaging us, and in every way, social engineering us and making life difficult for both men and women to get along, to have relationships, to have families, to have children. It's harder. I heard your previous guest today, and I
Mhm.
relate to him as well. It's all true what he said, you know, and
Yeah.
it's sad. It's deliberate. It was premeditated. It was engineered to be this way, and everybody's having a hard time. There isn't one person that can say that they're having it easy unless they're multimillionaires or billionaires that are completely oblivious to all of this or part of it, you know. And
Mhm.
so, what I can say is that I recommend that video. You can put the link up to her video as
Yeah.
well.
Mhm.
And wait a minute. And what else did I want to mention? There were other things that caught my attention that I thought were worth commenting on. A, let me just recall. You know, yeah, people at Fox News are also becoming more aggressive and more, awake, more hardcore. And this was
Mhm.
what was hoped it would happen eventually, because they are now left with no other option but to go full gas, hardcore, and not pull any punches and not be diplomatic or milk toast about this anymore, because it's not just the figure of Biden; it's the people behind Biden. His administration it's just an extension of the Obama administrations. It's the same people. It's the bureaucratic deep state. It's the same policies, same agendas. There's nothing different about it. So that is also worth noting, that it's very cynical, all the politics now that we are witnessing. So it makes people feel helpless. But in order to overcome the helplessness, it's just sound off, be vocal, spread the word. If enough people wake up to all of these things, they won't tolerate it, and they shouldn't tolerate it anymore. When she mentions all of the movements that have been orchestrated to work against the average middle class person, both man and woman, and to do it in a way as to make it seem like social justice or liberal causes, or guilt tripping you into thinking that you should support these movements, especially like the blacks with Black Lives Matter. She made a very good point that black leaders woke up and said this is not good for the black communities. This organization is it's a communistic. It's
Mhm.
in league with Antifa, which is also a socialist, communist, atheist, radical movement, and that
Or,
it's all this.
or probably the hired guns of the state, the
Right,
hired rabble of the
right,
state.
exactly. That's why they had pre-positioned pallets of bricks that were in the streets that the police did not remove when they began rioting. So that's the most obvious clue as to the orchestrated nature of these groups, and the violence that was also orchestrated. It's very cynical. It's all very cynical, and the average American that's used to living their anonymous, quiet existences will not be allowed to live in anonymity and in quiet, because this is coming for everybody, and
Mhm.
this is already affecting everybody. You already have the inflation, you already have the scarcity, you have the supply chain problems. This month, soon enough, you'll have a what do you call that, limits on diesel fuel and diesel fluids and all sorts of other things that are required to run diesel engines. You'll have shortages, and that will grind shipments and deliveries to a halt, and you'll have more supply chain problems. You'll have less on the shelves, and it'll be costing more. And so it'll become the vice grips are tightening on the necks of the average person worldwide now, where it's leaving them with no other choice but to stare this in the face, make sense of it, analyze it, internalize it, and believe it. It's no longer in the realm of nutty alternative media, conspiracy theorists, conspiracy theories that seem to be absurd. And that's the beauty of Melanie. I like her because she's more persuasive. To be honest, she persuades me more when I hear her than listening to Alex or Jay Dyer. Although they're very good and they're very informed, it's just because I relate to her more on a personal level.
Mhm.
Call it what have you, call it what you will, call it ethnocentric. I just because she's Jewish, and she has that New York accent, and she has that the smile and laughter that I relate to. It's like I'm looking at myself in the form of a woman giving me the information that I fully agree with. It just registers better, So that's the point, things are working in our favor, and even though things are going to become surreal and very difficult and very challenging, these people just won't get away with their plans, and masses will rise up against them, and they will know who to target. And this is also part of biblical prophecy about the end times, when the judgment day arrives, and the villains, the bad guys, actually meet their fate. They come to their end. And it's written about in the prophets. I can find the passages, but people know, the people that are aware of what I'm talking about know they can't hide in the clefts of the mountains, or in the on the far away islands that are secluded. There is no place of refuge for them on the planet, whether underground in Antarctica, or no matter where they hide themselves. They will come to their end when Judgment Day arrives, and we're on the edge of it. So I'm encouraged. I feel sort of like a calm, a sort of like a inner peace, because they couldn't hide this forever. And part of their a modus operandi, part of their rituals are to put it in your face, have you tacitly go along with it or agree to it. It's sort of like a demonic pact or demonic contract. And she made mention of this, and it's true. It's not that it's not a stretch. They actually put all this stuff out in their white papers, in their forums. You could see them, like Noah Harari, speaking openly about this in a shameless way, just putting it out there in front of everyone's faces, thinking that they'll just go along with it or not really pay attention to what he's saying and what he's proposing, and what it means, the consequences of it, or the what do you call it, the ramifications of it, or the profound nature of what he's saying.
Yes.
Is that it's like, how can you just let that fly right over your head? It's like, how can you have to wrestle with it. You have to
You have to react, you have to absorb it, and obey the moral imperative that we're all supposed to have.
Exactly.
And fight it.
Yes, exactly. Very, very well stated. Very well stated. And so it's good that all this is being exposed. It's being being driven home through repetition. That's the way to learn. It's to have it be repeated, and proven and have it stay fresh in people's minds, to have
Mhm.
it stay relevant, to have it not be forgotten, or have it not be just because of short attention spans that people have. People will be forced to confront this one way or another, and just in the way you stated it, respond with the moral imperative and fight against it. They're leaving us with no other choice. We have to be combatants. This is a war of, exactly like many others said, a war of ideas. It's a spiritual, mental, and a psychological war before anything other than that. And they have gotten away with, casting shade on everything, on creating a smoke screen, creating a haze, using gaslighting in a lot of the circumstances that we're talking about with the commercial mainstream media. They're still doing it to this very day, like today with the analysis that I've heard, like the markets, Yellen and Powell, all saying that the economy is great, it's strong, and it's just like in your face gaslighting, you
Mm.
know, and they're not getting away with it anymore. So
Yeah,
we are
lying openly to our faces, and
yes,
knowing that we know they're lying and still lying to us.
yes,
Yeah.
and so it's over for them. They are losing their credibility. The people,
Sam, I think people need to feel that they can win in order to fight, because I
right,
think maybe some people know what you're saying, but they don't think they can win the fight. And I'm saying, we don't have to sacrifice life and limb. We just talk to one person that we
right,
trust about these things, just one person, and that person in turn talks to another one. It's not
yes,
some big deal going over the top and being shot
yeah,
down in a hail of bullets kind of thing.
right. That's what Gog and Magog is in the Jewish eschatology. In the end times, the Gog and Magog war is more a war of ideas. It's when you have the screens as well. It's a reference to what you find hidden in the word Gog, Gigim, screens, a war of screens, a war of ideas. It is
It's a
also
struggle
physical.
with ourselves, because
Yes,
I think my greatest difficulty is knowing that the people I'm explaining my ideas to, they're not completely stupid. They're graduates. They've taken an interest in politics. They just can't go there. It's almost as if they're in therapy, in denial about
right,
something, and just refusing to go in a certain direction because they know it's where they don't want to go.
right.
You know.
In Hebrew, we talked about this with Vince, and when you were on with Vince, it's the Hebrew word is lakhish, makhishim. They are in willful denial. They just don't want to go there, and they prefer to mock this information or make fun of people trying to make them aware of this information, or to put them down, or to just dismiss them. But now we are reaching ahead. We are smacking up right against this juggernaut of a mess that has been triggered and activated to run us over. So it won't do its job, because enough people have been made fully aware and are awake and are spreading the message. So when it does do the damage it's going to do, it's not gonna be able to follow through and finish the job. It's not going to be able to mop up, because people, not everyone is zombified. Not everybody's asleep. Not everybody's going to be just like a helpless victim. Just by speaking out and focusing on the ones responsible, and there's so few, they can be taken out by the
Yes.
masses. They can be taken out by the marauders, the mobs that will be, incensed, and they will have nothing to lose, because they will have lost everything. So it's like I'm repeating
We just
Zelensky.
refuse to do what they say.
Exactly. Exactly. They won't listen to the banks, the institutions, the governments. They just won't listen to them. It will be not just civil disobedience, but there will be violence. It's unavoidable. There will be tremendous violence. A lot of people that were that were not prepared for this, that didn't want to prepare, didn't want to believe. They're going to be incensed in knowing that not only have they had their life savings stolen from them, their pensions, their investments, everything gets wiped out. Their home values get wiped out. They're lacking in food. They are lacking in water. They are desperate now. They are out on the streets. Scrummaging and scavenging, and they'll have to, they'll overwhelm the police forces, they'll overwhelm the authorities, and they'll be out for blood because when they also realize fully that they've been either uh, made sterile, they've been sterilized, and also they have been physically harmed. They've been injured physically to the point where their lives have been shortened, and their health has been seriously harmed. That either of themselves, or their family members, or their friends. People will be out for blood. All right, when things become without rule of law, and without the ability of these tyrants to get a grip on the masses. Because I'd say even the authorities, even the police forces, and the military apparatuses, or the security forces, they themselves will realize that they have been betrayed by these few elites, by this cabal. So wherever these people belonging to this cabal exist, they will be hunted down and put to death, as they should be. All right, and their time will come, and a lot of them will probably be committing suicide, just like Hitler in their bunkers. It's a repeat of history to a certain extent. They will realize that they have shot themselves in the foot. They are fully exposed.
It seems so unnecessary.
It is necessary. There has to
No,
be
it seems unnecessary for them to plot in this way when they must, obviously have enough to eat and, whatever to do with their lifestyles.
No, it's their arrogance that betrayed them. Their overconfidence, that they're having gotten away with this for decades. Their ability to dupe the masses in such a brazen way to their faces through the commercial media, especially, and through their programs, and through their conditioning, through the education system, and all the vectors that they've used and employed to keep us in a stupor, and half asleep, half awake, and wondering what's happening, and who's pulling the strings, and why have we gotten to this, and chasing our own tails. And now it's over. It's over. It's over for them. There's clarity. There's a consensus. A clear picture is easy to form and to put together in an average person's mind. That doesn't have to be a genius. That doesn't have to be an abstract thinker, or somebody that can see beyond. It's now all the pieces are available, and a clear picture can be put together thanks to people like Alex Jones, and thanks to people like Mel K, and thanks to other people in all the other formats, like the Flyover Country people, the married couple, whited couple on Flyover Country. They're good. A lot of the alternative media personalities that are very convincing. Owen Schroyer, and for the younger crowd in his early 30s, and all the different demographics of all the different types of people have their spokespeople that can convey the message and make it clear to them what is really going on, and what we are faced with, and what we have to resist. And in Israel, I think it happened to a great extent also with popular groups and populist groups in Tel Aviv, in the central station, where we had been overrun by African infiltrators. And they were trying to
African infiltrators. What do you mean? Sorry, I don't
the
understand.
Sudanese and the Eritreans over the many years. It was also George Soros's non-governmental organizations, interfering and meddling in our affairs, and trying to keep our southern border wide open. This was when Netanyahu was still prime minister, and this was like I don't know, a good long while ago, about 10, 15 years ago. our southern border with Sinai, with Egypt, was wide open, and we had African infiltrators from Sudan and Eritrea coming in here with all sorts of excuses of being refugees. And when they
Hmm.
were not, they'd already crossed several borders into other countries. They could have asked for a refugee status in Egypt, but no, they were told to overrun Israel and attempt the same things that are being done to Europe now and are being done to the United States now via the Mexican border. All right, this wasn't because we're a small country. We're too small to have this succeed. Enough people here made a ruckus to the point where the politicians could not ignore it, and Bibi was in command as the prime minister, and we had populist protests that demanded of him to do something, and George Soros and his crowd and the Rothschilds and the Europeans and all the bastards that wanted to have us be ruined by overwhelming us with foreigners that would change the population demographic here. It was all premeditated. It was all with hidden intentions and nefarious evil intentions to destroy Israel's Jewish character, and to use the guilt trip of, oh, Holocaust, oh, refugees, oh, they need refuge, oh, they need to be saved. You were Holocaust survivors. You're made up. They tried to use that guilt trip on the Ashkenaz, on the white European Jews, and it worked on them for a while until the Sephardic Mizrahi Jews that know better, they're a little more, at this point in that regard, we're a little more meshufshafim, a little more, worldly, and a little more,
Grounded,
grounded. That's a good way of putting it. Thank you very much.
not indoctrinated by liberalism.
Yes, not indoctrinated by liberalism. Thank you very much, Claire. Not indoctrinated by liberalism. Realistic, seeing things with clear eyes. We made enough of a stink. We shouted our heads off. We went to the protests, and we were, very judgmental of the Eshkuntuz liberals in Israel that were committing suicide and allowing this country to commit suicide by leaving our borders wide open. So luckily, Netanyahu is also grounded, a little, less indoctrinated, not as affected by the stupidity of left-wing liberal, atheistic, Holocaust guilt Jews, Ashkenazi Jews. We didn't let them destroy us. We didn't let them commit this country to suicide and self-destruction. So we made enough of a stink, and there are some grounded Ashkenazis as well. And they built a border fence, and they started to deport a lot of the infiltrators. All right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm saying the same thing for the West. If they want, that you shouldn't commit suicide. You shouldn't be you are being controlled by left-wing liberal mind control bastards that have zombified you and forced you to put down your defenses, lay down your sanity, your common sense. Same goes in the United States, And so we fought them off, and it's easier for us because fucking Soros, we know who he is. We know he's a Nazi collaborator. We know what his record is and what his history is. And Bibi hates him. And Bibi coordinates with, let's say, the Prime Minister of Hungary, Orban, against Soros. And Soros tries to use his Jewish identity or to claim anti-Semitism against him. He can go fuck himself. We all know what he is. He can't use that to bend us or guilt trip us or silence us. He can go fuck himself. We don't. We know exactly what he is. That he's a Nazi collaborator. He's a horrible Jew. If a Jew at all, he's an atheist and he's a Satanist and he's a Luciferian and he works for these elites and he's a lackey for them. He's very powerful, but we know what he is about. And so we should speak out and voice our opinions against him. This is a villainous Jew, a really bad Jew, born as a Jew. I can't call him a Jew today. He is what he is. He's a Satanist in the guise of a liberal, in the guise of
How is he a Satanist? I mean, does he practice?
They are de facto Luciferian Satanists because they see themselves as self-appointed gods. They are self-important. They see themselves as the elites. They see themselves as privileged. They see themselves as having a right to do this to the masses. That is the definition of a Luciferian Satanist. You know, a mind controlling, control freak. What's the word I'm looking for? Demagogues and megalomaniac. He's a megalomaniac. He spoke of himself as being the Messiah. George Soros.
Did he?
Yes. You want me to find it?
Yes, please.
Let's say it's so easy now, you know. I'll find it on YouTube. George Soros says he's the Messiah. And he really screwed up Malaysia, you know that. You should have a personal gripe against him.
Well, he nearly did, but Malaysia didn't join the IMF, thanks to Mahathir, the prime minister then.
Yeah. The terrifying truth about the Antichrist. Oh, okay, that's what comes up about him. Billionaire George Soros says the $10 billion a year proposed by rich nations to help the poor. He said this is the front bullshit that he says. And if it was remarks delivered at Davos 1 month ago. Oh, okay. Globalism, start global university. Ukraine invasion. Again, all this bullshit that nobody listens to at Davos. Let's just listen. Let's just get a sense of what he has to say that will give people a clear idea about here. In this, it's a 13-minute long interview.
My understanding is that you went out with this
from 60 Minutes, and let's just get just portions of it. We don't have to listen to all of it. But he puts his foot in his mouth several times over in the 60 Minutes, this old 60 Minutes interview. The people can get a clear sense of who he is and how he's a two-faced piece of shit, pretending to be a philanthropist.
Right. Would you like me to start in the middle or the beginning or
the beginning and just skip like every couple of minutes or so?
Okay.
And people will understand what it's about. I'm gonna eat.
Okay. What are you having?
No, egg sandwich and pizza.
Okay.
Pizza bread. I'm gonna mute.
Okay.
That would send lots of people to the psychiatric couch for many, many years. Was it difficult?
Not at all. Not at all.
Of all the financial titans and philanthropists of the 20th century, none are more complex or mysterious than George Soros. Like Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, and the Rockefellers, he amassed billions through ruthless business decisions, only to turn around and give away most of his fortune to advance his own personal philosophy. He can move world financial markets simply by voicing an opinion, or destabilize a government by buying and selling its currency. He also pledged more aid last year to help people in Russia than the U.S. government did. But now George Soros is worried. He thinks the global economy is coming apart at the seams and that the world needs to be protected from people like George Soros.
We may now think that everything is fine, but the fact is that the system is broke and it needs fixing.
What you're doing is asking some form of regulation to protect the world against you.
Well, I am a player, and I think all players should be regulated. There have to be rules of the game.
Take 81,000 to buy 48,000. Buy him 69,000 YUM.
Right now, his Quantum Group hedge fund moves $14 billion of rich investors' money around the world every day, looking for profits and answering to no one. Soros makes huge bets on whole countries and economies. Last year, when he saw cracks in the Asia boom, he began selling the currency in Thailand. Traders in Hong Kong followed suit, triggering a financial crisis that plunged much of Asia into a depression.
In the last 2 years, you've been blamed for financial collapse of Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan. in Russia?
All of the above. That's-
All of the above.
Yeah.
Are you that powerful?
No, I think there's a great misunderstanding.
The Prime Minister of Malaysia said that the region spent 40 years trying to build up its economy, and along comes a moron like Soros with a lot of money, and it's all over. He called you a criminal.
It's easier for him to blame an outside force than to admit that they were mismanaging their economy and their currency. The French finance minister talked about hanging speculators from lampposts.
Soros says the Asian currencies would have collapsed even if he hadn't been in the market. They were overvalued. He says people tend to follow his lead because he's been so successful.
I think that I've been blamed for everything. I am basically there to make money. I cannot and do not look at the social consequences of what I do.
This man is a carnivore of the first order.
Jim Grant is the editor of Grant's Interest Rate Observer and one of Wall Street's most respected analysts. He never tires of watching Soros, in part because of the huge bets he's willing to place on his hunches.
He has always amazed the people he's worked with at his audacity and his willingness to back up his commitments with enormous sums of money. It causes the blood to drain from ordinary mortals' faces.
Like risking $2 billion in Russia. When the Russian market began falling apart in August, Soros was the country's single largest investor. He called the U.S. Treasury and asked Uncle Sam for $7 billion to prop up the ruble. When U.S. officials failed to intervene, Soros wrote a letter to the Financial Times of London saying he thought the Russian currency should be devalued by as much as 25%. A few words from Soros were enough to cause panic selling that fueled the crash.
What's it like to have a statement that you make have such serious, grievous consequences? I mean, you can, it looks to me like in a number of situations, you can take a position against the currency or make a statement, and the whole country falls apart.
But it's a tremendous sense of responsibility, actually. And it's also a humbling experience because I am actually trying to do the right thing. And sometimes what I do has an unintended negative consequence, as it did in Russia.
For both the Russian middle class and for Soros, who lost his $2 billion. Whatever his motivations, no one can accuse him of greed. He's backed away from the day-to-day operation of his businesses and is giving away his billions now with the same determination that he made them in places like Haiti, a country that has less money in the bank than he does. Last month, he brought the First Lady with him for a look at some of the projects his foundation is funding.
Mr. George Soros, and he's going to be helping the hospital.
This year, Soros plans to give away almost $500 million around the world. In Bosnia, when the water supply to Sarajevo was cut off at the height of the siege, it was Soros who wrote a check to jury-rig a pipeline through an abandoned highway tunnel.
$5 million up front can be more valuable than $50 million a year or two later.
Ambassador Richard Holbrooke brokered the peace in Bosnia.
At one point, after the Dayton peace agreements in Bosnia in 1995, for a considerable period of time, George had given more money to implement the peace agreements than the U.S. government had. He just could move that fast.
In Russia, he pledged $100 million to help scientists who might otherwise have sold their expertise to bidders like Iran or Iraq. In Eastern Europe, he's educated a new generation. And in Ukraine, he spent millions retraining the old Soviet military.
At the center of George Soros, there's an inherent contradiction, which is on one hand, you're the capitalist who does not care about the social consequences of his act, and on the other hand, you are a philanthropist who cares only about social consequences. How do you resolve the two?
Recognizing that as a competitor, I've got to compete to win. As a human being, I am concerned about the society in which I live.
Which George Soros am I talking to now? The amoral George Soros or the moral George Soros?
It's one person. It's one person who at one time engages in amoral activities and at the rest of the time tries to be moral.
To understand the complexities and contradictions in his personality, you have to go back to the very beginning, to Budapest, where George Soros was born 68 years ago to parents who were wealthy, well-educated, and Jewish. When the Nazis occupied Budapest in 1944, George Soros' father was a successful lawyer. He lived on an island in the Danube and liked to commute to work in a rowboat. But knowing there were problems ahead for the Jews, he decided to split his family up. He bought them forged papers, and he bribed a government official to take 14-year-old George Soros in and swear that he was his Christian godson. But survival carried a heavy price tag. While hundreds of thousands of Hungarian Jews were being shipped off to the death camps, George Soros accompanied his phony godfather on his appointed rounds, confiscating property from the Jews. These are pictures from 1944 of what happened to George Soros' friends and neighbors.
You're a Hungarian Jew who escaped the Holocaust by posing as a Christian, right? And you watched lots of people get shipped off to the death camps, right?
I was 14 years old. And I would say that that's when my character was made.
In what way?
That one should think ahead, one should understand and anticipate events, and one is threatened. It was a tremendous threat of evil. I mean, it was a very personal experience of evil.
My understanding is that you went out with this protector of yours who swore that you were his adopted godson.
Yes.
Went out, in fact, and helped in the confiscation of property from the Jews.
That's right.
I mean, that sounds like an experience that would send lots of people to the psychiatric couch for many, many years. Was it difficult?
Not at all. Not at all. Maybe as a child you don't see the connection, but it created no problem at all.
No feeling of guilt.
No.
For example, I'm Jewish, and here I am watching these people go. I could just as easily be there. I should be there. None of that.
Well, of course, I could be on the other side, or I could be the one from whom the thing is being taken away. But there was no sense that I shouldn't be there because that was. Well, actually, funny way. It's just like in markets that if I weren't there. Of course, I wasn't doing it, but somebody else would be taking it away anyhow. Whether I was there or not, I was only a spectator. The property was being taken away.
So I had no role in taking away that property. So I had no sense of guilt.
Are you religious?
No.
Do you believe in God?
No.
Soros told us he believes God was created by man, not the other way around, which may be why he thinks he can smooth out the world's imperfections. When we went with him to Ukraine, he was treated like a visiting head of state and was received by the president. Then he was received by the prime minister and finally the central bank.
20% in cash.
They even allowed him to look at the books and asked him for advice. Lots of people want George Soros' advice. Most recently, South African President Nelson Mandela.
Actually, President Mandela asked me, how could South Africa protect itself against speculators like you? And I told him, I wrote him a memo, trying to give him the best advice I could, how to reduce the exposure of South Africa to speculative attack.
That's the old stop me before I kill again approach, right? You're telling this is what you can do to stop me.
Whether I or somebody else does whatever is happening in the markets, it really doesn't make any difference to the outcome. I don't feel guilty because I'm engaged in an amoral activity which is not meant to have anything to do with guilt.
Part of the reason he is so rich is that the Soros hedge funds operate offshore in the Netherlands and Antilles to avoid scrutiny by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So even while Soros tells Congress and the Treasury that hedge funds must be regulated to stop the global crisis, he's avoiding the rules. Why is it that Americans can't invest in the quantum fund? It's an offshore fund. Why is that?
Because the fund is not registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. We are not
licensed to do business in the United States.
That's right. Because we are not registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Because we find it more convenient to operate without it.
So in some ways it's to escape regulation.
Yeah, that's right.
But you've been sitting here talking about the need for regulation.
Yes, and whatever regulations are imposed, we will obey. We already conform to everything.
If the beneficiaries of Soros' billions do not understand the intricacies of SEC rules and offshore hedge funds, they do understand what he's done for them. The president of Haiti is reading his new book, The Crisis of Global Capitalism, and so is President Clinton. Will all the attention spoil George Soros?
George Soros, in a way, is Donald Trump without the humility.
One of your money managers told us that George really does think he's a god.
I mean, if you think that you're God and you're going to financial markets, you're bound to come out broke. So the fact that I'm not broke shows that I don't believe that I'm God.
Yeah. So, yeah, you recall in James Bond, a lot of the themes of the sinister organization that tries to rule the world goes by the name of Quantum, not just Spectre, but Quantum. All right. So it was also Jay Dyer mentioned this in his analysis, and also Alex Jones mentioned it. That it was the author of the scripts and the stories about of James Bond, the guy by the name of Broccoli. The guy who wrote. He was part of MI6. And he's the guy. He was the guy who invented James Bond.
Yes. Was it not Ian Fleming?
Yeah, Ian Fleming. Sorry, Ian Fleming. But who's that Broccoli guy? Oh, that's the guy.
I think it was a director, wasn't it?
Yeah. One second, let me look it up. It's Ian Fleming, but James Bond producer by the name of Broccoli, Albert Broccoli. He's a producer. So it's Ian Fleming and this guy, Albert Broccoli. Ian Fleming is the author of the scripts, and Albert Broccoli was the producer of the movies. That's.
And there's somebody also called Barbara Broccoli.
Yeah, that's his daughter. Yeah.
Who's also a producer.
Yeah. Exactly. So they are insiders, and so they know that this kind of stuff is based on reality. And it's 60 Minutes tried to do a nice public relations piece on George Soros, making mention of the fact that it's complicated and he's got a sordid past, and this is the type of person he is. His outer appearance is that of a philanthropist, but people know that he's involved in the color revolutions and overthrowing Ukraine's government in the early 2010s, and also in Kazakhstan and other places. It's always him, and he had meddled in Israel's affairs, foreign affairs and domestic affairs, in trying to implement the overrunning of the Jewish state by African infiltrators, so-called.
How would it benefit him to do that? It's
his open society, grand scheme that's servicing the elites of Europe and America, the cabal, whereby no nation has real sovereignty, no national sovereignty, no ethnic or religious identity. And so it becomes like a gray zone that becomes easier to control when you have everybody disenfranchised and impoverished or marginalized and incapable of fighting back. It gives them extra leverage and extra power over everyone, over everything. So that's why they prefer to have the third world overrun the first world, in order to marginalize the first world's ability to sort of like fight back or struggle, or to like build a resistance, or to actually speak out. That is their grand agenda. It's like we are left feeling helpless. We are left feeling incapable of saying anything. They muzzle us, and we can't gather up our strength. It's about paralyzing us from several vectors. With using liberal guilt and shaming, and mind control, progressivism, and indoctrination, propaganda, conditioning us, and having those that resist be isolated, and also trying to isolate us. It is very cunning, and because the average mind is weak and incapable of connecting the dots, and we don't have enough thought leaders, they do have a powerful effect, and they do manage to corrupt culture and corrupt societies and corrupt national sovereignty and corrupt the identity, the national identity of countries that allow this to be done to them. So we put up a resistance. Because we're a small country, because we are embattled, because we are surrounded, because we have all this experience of struggling to survive and trying to maintain our national identity and our religious identity in our ancient homeland, we did not put up with any of it. We were more grounded, and we made sure to shut the mouths of the snooty, uptight, full of themselves, eshkontus, the shknos, the Ashkenazim, that we work with and live with, and some of us are married with them. We have children with them. So we managed to put them in their place. Shut the fuck up about the Holocaust, and shut the fuck up about the fucking Africans being like Holocaust victims that we should accept as Holocaust victims, and to ruin the national makeup of the Jewish state. It's like, go fuck yourselves, you and your fucking Holocaust guilt bullshit. Shove it up your asses. You want to destroy your children. You want to destroy our children because of your Holocaust guilt, because of your conditioned liberal libtwat horse shit. And this is what you're doing in Europe, and this is what you're doing in America. You think you're going to do this, get away with this here in Israel? We had enough black Jews putting the white Jews in their place because they're so stupid and so guilt-ridden, and so what's called yefeh nefesh. Well, the world. What will the world think of us? What will the world say about us? They'll call us hypocrites. They'll call us like we don't live up to what we say. This is a national refuge for the Jewish people, not for all of fucking Africa. They needed to get that message across in their fucking heads by Jews that are not intimidated by them. All right. With Jews living here, fighting and scrounging here for their living, Mizrahi, Sephardic, black Jews, what have you. Even the fucking Ethiopian Jews were telling the Ashkenazis, "Are you out of your fucking mind?" And they finally listened. They finally shut their stupid fat yappers. It's like, I don't care what the fucking Europeans have to say about Israel not accepting black African infiltrators that are Muslims that want to destroy us. I'm sorry that they are radical Muslims. I mean, some Muslims are fine and good and fine, but these people came here with the intention of overwhelming us and telling us, well, Jerusalem is not your capital. Israel is not the Jewish state. They were being interviewed on the streets of Tel Aviv. These African, Sudanese, Eritrean infiltrators, and they were brazenly saying, well, no, This isn't the Jewish state. This belongs to us. This belongs to the whole world. All right? They were outright coming and shamelessly saying, we're here to change the makeup of this country. It belongs to the whole world. It's not a Jewish state. Well, once that happened, enough of the idiotic white Ashkenazis got a little bit, of a wake-up call, and they began to quietly, work against the infiltration, and they worked in favor of deportation, and they worked in favor of a fence, of a border wall. And that's what it took. I mean, you need Jews to put Jews in their place. As far as influencing them, persuading them, arguing with them, getting them to do what's right, because they feel a sense of superiority towards the Gentiles. They feel like they are, they know they're the moral authorities. Oh, and the Gentiles give them this kind of credit because of the history. Well, they don't deserve it. They're fucking idiots. What are you going to do? Self-destruct your country? Suicide yourselves just to calm your conscience or your guilty conscience over the Holocaust? Go fuck your mothers, you fucking morons. We didn't let them do that to us. Because it was a matter of our lives and the lives of our children, the future of our country, and the makeup and the identity of our country. We had to shut them up. And we did a good job because, we could guilt trip other Jews. Jews can guilt trip other Jews because they have no barriers in guilt tripping them. Jews, are very good at guilt tripping Gentiles. The Gentiles just don't. They take it. They don't resist them. They don't fight them. But this is a positive development now in Europe and in America, where the Gentiles are telling the Jews, "Go fuck yourselves. We're not listening to your horse shit anymore. Okay, the Holocaust was a tragedy. You will not be guilt tripping us into destroying our national makeup and our identity anymore. Go fuck yourselves. Go back to Israel. Basically, you go back to Israel and keep your stupid fat fucking mouth shut. We don't need to hear your input on our politics, our economics, our sovereignty, our heritage, our history. None of it. We don't hear it. We don't need to hear it from you, especially through the media. We don't want you. We don't want your influence through the media. I'm fed up. It's like the diaspora Jews, the exiled Jews. The shtick is up. You have lost. You have no power, no control, no influence. Everything's working against you. Buy a fucking clue. The Gentiles themselves should be telling you, and many of them are telling you, pack your shit and get out. Come back to Israel. Go back to living in Israel. And here you won't be able to get one over on other Jews. Here you'll have to actually work for a living. Here you'll be living in fucking tents and in fucking shacks until in order to pay for your stiff-necked stupidity and arrogance and meddling in the affairs of the Gentiles. Well, you shouldn't have. Time is up. That's it. It's over.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, nobody's going to put up with this anymore. When it's a matter of life and death, the future of your children, and what they, whether they deserve the blame or not. And now I'm referencing Brother Nathaniel and everything. We on John's show, we did an analysis of the crazy a Jew that became an Orthodox Russian monk or preacher, and he's rabidly anti-Semitic and rabidly anti-left, anti-liberal Jew. He makes a lot of good points. Right-wing conservative Jews at this point are going to be pigeonholed. They're going to be identified with the lefties. And they're going to catch heat, just like during what happened, in the Second World War. All the Jews, no matter whether they were religious, left-wing, atheist, no matter what stream they were in, they all ended up being, murdered together in the gas chambers and in the furnaces and in the pits where they were shot, where they were stripped naked and shot and buried all together. It was God's way of saying, hey, look, you think you can mess around and cause division amongst the Gentiles, and what's worse, amongst yourselves. When you create division amongst yourselves and you're infighting amongst yourselves, that is the fastest way to get me to turn away from you. You have distanced yourself from me. I'm turning my face from you, and you will be left to your own devices. And that's what ended up being this horrible, horrific justice of the religious Jews and non-religious Jews all being lined up naked and shot and thrown into the pit to die together, where they could not get along in life. they had to be together in death, buried in mass graves. That's the horrible truth of it.
And on that,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, on that note. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Go
Well,
ahead.
well, I don't know. Well, is that a suitably somber note to?
Yeah. I mean, Mel K can listen to this. I heard through that a interview she gave, that special exclusive to the Flyover Country couple, that she's a very serious student of the Holocaust and what led up to the Holocaust, and the attitudes and behaviors that and the psychology of both the Jews and the Gentiles. She wants to study all of the facets of the Holocaust. And Zev Zelenko's Zichrono Livracha, of blessed memory, his family were all Holocaust survivors in Ukraine, and he has his own stories. He had his own stories to tell. He told his stories. But as a religious Jew, and she's a believing Jew as well, what I said could sound extremely insulting. It can sound extremely offensive to them. But a lot of them deep down inside know. I listened to my Rebbitzin, also of blessed memory, Esther Young Rice. She was Hungarian. She's a Holocaust survivor. Most of her family murdered in the Holocaust. The ones that are religious, the ones that stayed believers, the ones that believe in God, can analyze everything that happened and everything that led up to the Holocaust. And they can understand that the Jews bear a lot of responsibility for what had happened in Europe, for their becoming a sort of overly liberal, overly accommodating, overly accommodating, overly flexible with the philosophies of the Enlightenment, and also as well as with Christianity. They over assimilated, they over intermarried, and they were squabbling amongst themselves. You had the Orthodox and the Reform in heated arguments and debates, and they were like creating they splintered off from one another. And there was also infighting on the level of in the First World War, you had German Jews in the trenches fighting French Jews in the French army in the French trenches. It's like Jews were fighting for nations that that they were only guests of and accepted as full citizens, and then they volunteered to serve in their militaries, and that's like the worst of the worst. It's you're killing one another in the name of Gentile nations and in the name of your
Gentile imperialism.
And Gentile imperialism and allegiance to Gentile nations. You're killing your brothers in the fields of combat. You can't see how that will infuriate the Creator. It's like when the Jews do not get along and when they infight, God turns away from them. And so if Mel K is listening to this, what I said before about dying in the trenches, she knows what I'm talking about. She knows that secular Jews, secular atheistic Western European Jews that may be German or French or whatever, less religious Jews that had compromised with Europe and tried to adjust by becoming European more than Jewish, ended up dying in the camps in Auschwitz or anywhere around Europe, in Germany or Poland or Ukraine or whatever. A lot of ultra-Orthodox Jews had been put together with secular atheist left-wing Western European Jews, so-called sophisticated Jews. They were all murdered together, and they all ended up being buried together. So she knows that as harsh as it sounds, as somber as it sounds, she's a believing person. She knows exactly what I'm getting at. So yeah, and a lot of them understand this. It's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow, but a lot of them understand it. We can end on that note.
All right then.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. My pleasure. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.